Hello there. Well, today is the first day of fall here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so wherever you are in the world, I just wanted to wish you a happy change of season. It's rainy outside where I am today here in just outside Washington, D.C. And suddenly it feels like, yes, summer is starting to move behind us. And this pandemic is slowly moving behind us as well, which I was listening to a podcast this morning and they were saying, there is reason for optimism. And, that's pretty good news, particularly when it comes from those who have been rather pessimistic over the last 12, 18 months. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about how you can ultimately be a greater force for good whatever spheres you are operating in, and in particular, how you can lead with greater courage. So as you know, I've been doing this Stop Playing Safe series based on my book, Stop Playing Safe. And yes, shameless plug for Stop Playing Safe. For those of you who are watching, there it is. I love that cover. And chapter 7 of Stop Playing Safe is about how you can inspire others around you to be braver, and how you can show up in ways that ultimately create an environment that everybody is able to speak up more openly, to challenge old ideas, to experiment with new ones, and ultimately for everyone to be able to work together and get more done and achieve better outcomes. So this last 18 months, 20 months, I've lost count, has certainly magnified our sensitivity to risk in many ways. And a lot of people have found themselves being pretty cautious. And in a lot of companies that I'm working with, a lot of people talk about they're just change fatigued, uncertainty fatigued. It's just been going on for so long. And yet, in the midst of times like this, when there is the disruption, when there is the uncertainty, when there's so much change, and we're all still figuring out what this new normal looks like, there's also enormous opportunity to come up with better ways of doing things. And so I want to just share with you on this live stream, and welcome to those of you who are joining me. Thank you, Delia. Let me know where you're from if you are joining me live right now. I'd love to just know where you are joining me from around the world. And I know in Australia it's pretty early. It's only 5:30 in the morning, where they had an earthquake yesterday in the southern seaboard there. So I'm guessing a lot of people are probably still in bed, but wherever you are, I'd love to hear where you're from and what you're looking forward to in the season ahead as well. But just last Monday, I did my first keynote speech on a stage in a room with lots of other people. And I knew it had been a long time. The last time I was on a stage was in Sydney, Australia, and it was on March the 6th, 2020. And I flew back to Singapore immediately after that, getting back there that evening. And I did a talk the following week at a company where they had a few people in the room, but they were largely just kind of live streaming it out to their people across Asia Pacific. But I certainly haven't been on a stage until Monday since early March. And I said to Siri, how many days is it between my last talk and today's? And Siri said 565 days that I had not been in a room with people speaking. And I love speaking, and I love people, and I love being with people. And I know myself, it's been hard over this time not to be connecting with people in person, because it's not the same. And as brilliant as this live stream technology is, it is not the same as if I was in a room with you. There's nothing replaces the energy of people coming together. And so, hello, Queen from Tanzania, East Africa. And hello, Elizabeth from Seal Beach, California. And Delia, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from Staten Island, New York. Awesome. Thank you for joining me. And so for me, just getting together with people in person was it was a milestone, but it's hard sometimes to feel like you're really playing from your strengths when you're not able to be utilizing those strengths and in the ways that you'd really ideally like to be. And I'm guessing that you've found yourself challenged in this time too. So when it comes to leadership, I always say your ability to lead others, to inspire others, to embolden others is directly proportional to your ability to lead and inspire and embolden yourself. And if you're stuck focusing on what's wrong, on what you can't do, on what you don't want, if you're not deeply rooted to a sense of purpose yourself, it's going to be pretty hard to get the best and inspire the best from those around you. And so if you're in any sort of role where you want to get other people around you showing up and giving their best, I encourage you to make sure you are prioritizing, really anchoring yourself to those values that you want to embody as a leader, to those attributes that you want to embody. I call them power virtues, but also just continually reconnecting to your own sense of purpose. I hope you listen to my podcast conversation with Kevin Cashman. And you can go to thelivebravepodcast.com and listen to that if you haven't already, because we did a real deep dive into what it is to not just how do you find your purpose. And he talked about your gifts, your growth edge, and what you want to give, but also how do you stay on purpose? And so as I share with you the 3 core pillars to my leadership framework for courageous leadership, at the beginning, at the heart of it all is your ability to lead yourself. And then from that place, pillar number 1 is connecting authentically with others. Before people decide what they think of you, what they think of what you have to say, they decide what they think of you. And so we lead by virtue of who we are. We inspire people by virtue of who we are, not by our impressive academic credentials or, how brilliantly we can, what an orator we are, not by, how smart we may come across or our IQ. It's really the way we show up, our way of being and being authentic. And it's why your ability to connect in a very authentic way and establish authentic connection with other people is so pivotal to your ability to build meaningful relationships, to cultivate followers, people who want to work with you and want to work for you. I mean, would you want to work for you? And maybe you would. Maybe you're like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm great. But maybe, sometimes you're not. Maybe you can sometimes be impatient or difficult. Maybe you can sometimes not always be overly present to people. Maybe at times you can be very critical. So just ask yourself, are you the kind of person that you would want to work with and work for? And if there's some gaps in there, I invite you to have a look at that. But being able to build trust in every encounter, which I know is chapter 3 of Stop Playing Safe. I talked about the core dimensions of building trust. But the more you can build trust, the more people can count on you to do what's right, even when it costs you, to mean what you say and say what you mean, to have their back. That's going to go a long way to your ability to get them, to influence them, to inspire them, maybe to get them to even change their mind on things. The second core pillar is about inspiring people. And, Winston Churchill said, before you can move others, you yourself must first be moved. Before you can inspire others, your own tears must flow. And yeah, maybe that feels like a stretch for your own tears to flow. But when you're fired up about the reason that you do what you do every day and why you get out of bed and why what you do, what your team does, what your organization does really matters. Why is the world better off because it exists? That's going to be contagious. It's going to affect everyone around you. And emotions are contagious. And so how deeply rooted you can be in optimism, in enthusiasm, in passion and purpose, that's going to rub off enormously. And you have to be absolutely exuding that. Leaders expand what other people see as possible. And if you think back to, say, JFK in the early 60s, he said at the end of this decade, we want to get a man on the moon. A lot of people would have thought, is that even possible to get a man on the moon? I'm sure there were plenty of cynics. But he was passionate and he was purposeful. And of course, he was a very charismatic leader too. But he rallied the brightest minds of the time. And sure enough, a man landed on the moon by the end of that decade. Martin Luther King, I have a dream. He expanded the context of what other people saw was possible. And sure, we may still not live in a world where people are judged solely by their character and not the color of their skin. But still, he inspired people of a vision of what's possible. And so for you, I just would like you to think about, are you inspired by the future? Are you connected to a purpose in what you do? And do you feel that what you do really matters? And if not, what do you need to do and shift either how you're going about doing what you're doing, or to expand your vision so that you feel it does? Because you're never going to get other people feeling enthusiastic and engaged and rolling up their sleeves if you aren't showing up really passionately and really inspiring other people with what's possible. And the third core pillar to ultimately really amplifying that ripple effect, which is what leadership's about, right? It's about creating synergy. You do more together than you alone and the sum of the parts could ever do alone. And so that third aspect of it is to embolden people. I have written a lot about psychological safety and creating a culture of courage. And yes, I believe that in order for any team, any unit, any group, even in my own family, for people to thrive, they have to be an environment that encourages them to think big and to speak up and to take interpersonal risks, to share what they really think in respectful ways, but candidly and openly. And so, are you someone that other people feel comfortable speaking the truth to? How often do people come to you and share with you something that maybe you don't really like it or agree with it, but they're comfortable sharing that with you? I have some friends who have very different political views than I do. And we have some awesome conversations because I'm curious and I want to know, why do you think what you think? I really want to understand it. What is it that I might be missing here? Because I know you're not stupid. And so I want to understand, why do you think what you think? And I think we need a lot more of that, honestly, in the public discourse. If you think about President Abraham Lincoln, he created a team of rivals. He had his opponents, his political opponents, in his cabinet because he wanted to know why they felt so fiercely and held opinions that were so often diametrically different to his own. And so for you, making sure you create an environment, even in your interpersonal relationships, where there's a space for people to disagree agreeably, where people don't just feel that it's safe for them to speak up, but actually that they're encouraged to, that you want to know what's on people's minds and on what's on people's hearts. I wrote in Stop Playing Safe that people play safe unless they feel safe to do otherwise. Our natural inclination is to be cautious, is to be timid, is to hold back. And so regardless of whether or not you have a title or a position of formal authority or formal leadership, you have the ability every single day to create relationships where there is high trust, where people know that you have their back and that they know that they can be truthful and honest and vulnerable with you, and you will take care of that. And so I hope that just sharing with you that very simple framework, connecting with people authentically, inspiring people and expanding what they see as possible, and emboldening people, making risk safe, and creating that environment, that culture of courage, where people really do feel empowered to bring their boldest thinking to the table, that will make such a difference to your ability to be a force for good in whatever sphere you operate in. So if you haven't yet got a copy of are we there? Oops, sorry, I just flicked my mouse. If you haven't yet got a copy of Stop Playing Safe, I hope you will go. Just go to stopplayingsafe.com. You can order it. And if you have got it, I would love it if you would write a review. And obviously, if you're listening to my Live Brave podcast, I would love if you would leave a review there too. But most of all, if you do nothing else, I just encourage you to show up in the world as the kind of person that you want to see more of, to be an ambassador for the world you'd like to live in, because at the heart of leadership is showing up really with courage and with character. And ultimately, the only thing that you need to be a leader is the decision to decide to step up to the plate and act as one. So be the change you want to see. And thank you for tuning in from all over. I'm great to see. Hi, Mike from Fresno as well. It's awesome to have people joining me, and I look forward to joining you again in a couple of weeks. I'm off to Europe next week to speak at another conference, and I'll be back in 2 weeks' time. All right, take care.